My mother-in-law slowly poisoned me with herbal tea until a CT scan exposed her plot, and I survived to see her jailed forever. In a small townhouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Emily Harris was pouring coffee for her husband, Brian, in the kitchen where autumn morning sunlight streamed through the windows. 5 years into their marriage, their morning routine had become a peaceful ritual. "I have a big project presentation today," Emily said as she placed buttered toast on a plate. "It's a new client, and if it goes well, it could be a major contract for the company." Brian looked up from his newspaper at his wife. He was a serious man who worked at an architectural firm. His gentle nature and deep compassion were among the reasons Emily had decided to marry him. "That's wonderful. With your talent, I'm sure you'll succeed," he said with genuine encouragement. "But haven't you been working too hard lately? You should get more rest." Emily sat down next to her husband with a smile. It was true that work at the advertising agency was demanding. Developing new clients especially required time and energy. However, she took pride in her work. "I'll be fine. Once this month's project is finished, things will calm down a bit." Brian took his wife's hand. "Oh, by the way, Mom is coming this weekend. She says she'll make that lasagna you love again." Emily's face brightened. Her mother-in-law, Helen, visited their home about twice a month to cook homemade meals for them. Helen was a kind woman who genuinely cared about her son and daughter-in-law. Helen's lasagna is absolutely delicious. Even though she taught me the recipe, I can never make it taste quite the same. Mom's a great cook. She's been making meals for the family every day for 40 years since she married Dad. Brian's father, George, was a gentle, quiet, retired office worker. Both parents had wholeheartedly welcomed their son's marriage. For Emily, the Harris parents were ideal in-laws. "Next time, I should cook something to return the favor," Emily said while drinking her coffee. "But compared to Helen, my cooking is—" "That's not true. Your cooking is delicious too," Brian encouraged his wife. Their conversation naturally turned to the future. 5 years into marriage, people around them were increasingly asking, "So, when are you having children?" Helen in particular clearly looked forward to grandchildren. "Mom is looking forward to grandchildren," Brian said somewhat hesitantly. "But I think we should decide at our own pace." Emily appreciated her husband's thoughtfulness. Children was indeed a topic they discussed frequently. While Emily found fulfillment in her work, she also yearned to build a family. "I want children too. But once my current work settles down a bit," she expressed her honest feelings. "I feel bad for Helen, but it's our life." "You're right. Mom will understand." Looking at the clock, it was already past 8. They both hurried to get ready. Brian had a construction site inspection, and Emily had an important presentation ahead of her. At the front door, Brian kissed his wife goodbye. "Good luck today. I'll make dinner. Thank you." "You be careful too." After seeing her husband off, Emily got into her car. The Boston cityscape gleamed in the morning light. Her marriage was going well, and work was fulfilling. Surrounded by her loving husband and warm in-laws, she felt happy. The first sign of trouble came 3 months ago at the end of summer. Emily was drinking her morning coffee when she noticed her body felt unusually heavy. Normally she would drink a second cup and start her day energetically, but that day she was overcome with fatigue before finishing her first cup. "Maybe I'm just a little sleep-deprived," she told herself. Project deadlines were overlapping, and she certainly hadn't been getting enough sleep. However, even with adequate sleep, the fatigue didn't disappear. If anything, it seemed to get worse each day. Getting up in the morning became difficult, and by afternoon her concentration would fade. Colleagues began worrying, telling her, "You don't look well lately. Are you okay?" Brian had noticed the change in his wife. "You don't seem to have much appetite lately either." Emily forced a smile. "It's probably just the change of seasons. I'll see how it goes for a while longer." But the physical problems weren't limited to that. Her menstrual cycle began to become irregular too. Her previously regular periods became delayed, sometimes not coming for 2 months at a time. She thought it might be hormonal changes. In October, Emily finally decided to see a gynecologist. At a well-regarded clinic in downtown Boston, she received a thorough examination and tests. "I don't see any major abnormalities," the middle-aged female doctor said, while looking at the test results. Your hormone levels are within normal ranges, too. Have you been under stress at work lately? Emily answered honestly. I've certainly been in a busy period, but I've had similar busy periods before. A woman's body is delicate. As you age, the same stress can have a greater impact on your body, the doctor explained kindly. Let's start by reviewing your lifestyle. Focus on getting adequate rest and eating well-balanced meals. Then come back in a month. Emily decided to follow the doctor's advice and adjust her workload. Fortunately, her company was understanding, and she was able to hand over several projects to colleagues. She made an effort to go to bed early and rise early and to eat nutritious meals. Brian also looked after his wife's health, actively helping with household chores. Don't overdo it. Tell me if there's anything I can do, he said. His kindness became Emily's emotional support. Mother-in-law Helen was worried too. You're working too hard, Emily. Young women need to take care of their bodies, she said, bringing homemade soup and tea almost weekly. This is an herbal tea my grandmother taught me to make. It's very effective for recovering from fatigue. The herbal tea Helen brought had a distinctive aroma, but it warmed Emily's body when she drank it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your constant thoughtfulness. We're family. Having you healthy is what matters most, Helen replied with motherly warmth. However, even after a month, Emily's condition didn't improve. If anything, new symptoms began to appear. She started experiencing frequent dizzy spells and vertigo, and sometimes felt nauseous too. This isn't normal. Emily became anxious. She visited the gynecologist again, but the test results were unchanged from before. Blood tests also showed normal values. Is there a possibility of pregnancy? The doctor asked. The home test was negative. Emily shook her head. And my periods are irregular. I see. Then let's consider seeing other specialists. How about getting a full-body examination at internal medicine? Emily was confused. Not knowing the cause of her poor health was the most distressing part. Her work performance had clearly declined, and she felt guilty about causing trouble for her colleagues. Could it be some serious illness? She found herself waking up in the middle of the night overwhelmed by such anxieties. Brian couldn't bear to see his wife suffering. Emily, why don't you get examined at my brother's hospital? Brian's brother, David, was the head of internal medicine at a large general hospital in Boston. David was known as an excellent physician with a reputation for diagnosing complex cases. But I don't want to trouble him. Emily hesitated. We're family, so there's no need to hold back. David is worried about your health too, Brian persuaded his wife. A large hospital should be able to do more detailed tests. Emily finally agreed. She couldn't continue like this. It was affecting both her work and daily life. She wanted to find the cause and receive proper treatment. When they contacted David, he readily agreed to do the examination. Don't worry, Emily. I'll definitely find the cause and get you better, he said. His words sounded reassuring. After scheduling the tests, Emily felt somewhat relieved. On the morning of the examination, Emily woke up with mixed feelings of anxiety and hope. Finally, the mystery of the poor health she'd suffered for 3 months might be solved. She headed to the hospital with her husband. It'll be okay. David will examine you. Brian squeezed his wife's hand. I'm sure we'll find out what's wrong. Walking through the hospital's front entrance, a white-tiled corridor stretched ahead. The smell of disinfectant hit her nose, making Emily a little nervous. When she gave her name at reception, a nurse politely guided them. Dr. Harris is waiting for you. This way, please. David's examination room was spacious, befitting the head of internal medicine. Medical books lined the walls, and family photos were displayed on the desk. David stood in his white coat, greeting them both with a warm smile. Emily, how are you feeling? He stood up from his chair and looked at his sister-in-law with concern. Brian told me about it. You've been having health problems for 3 months now. Emily explained her symptoms in detail: the fatigue, irregular periods, dizziness, nausea. She also shared the results from her previous gynecological examinations. David listened intently, occasionally asking questions while taking notes. I see. You certainly have multiple overlapping symptoms, David pondered. Today, let's do thorough tests, blood work, urine analysis, and I'd like to do a CT scan too. A CT scan? Emily was a bit surprised. Just as a precaution. I want to check if there are any abnormalities in your internal organs, David said reassuringly. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a preventive examination. First, they went to the blood testing room. A nurse efficiently drew blood and ordered multiple test panels. Next came the urine test, then an ultrasound examination. All of these were tests Emily had had before. Finally, we'll do the CT scan, the technician explained. We'll use contrast dye to get a detailed look at your internal organs. The CT scan room was dimly lit with a large machine positioned in the center. Emily changed into a hospital gown and lay down on the bed. When the contrast dye entered her body, she felt a warm sensation spreading through her. "Hold your breath," came the technician's voice. The machine began to move quietly. Emily closed her eyes and waited for the examination to finish. She prayed that this would reveal the cause. When the examination was over, the technician began checking the images on the monitor. Emily finished changing and waited beside the bed for the results. How does it look?" Emily asked. The technician was staring at the screen, but suddenly his expression changed. He furrowed his brow and began enlarging the image and changing angles as if confirming something. "Please wait just a moment." The technician stood up and left the room. Emily became anxious. Had they found something abnormal? A few minutes later, the technician returned with an older man who appeared to be his supervisor. The two spoke in low voices while pointing at the monitor images. "Have the patient wait and contact Dr. Harris immediately," the supervisor instructed. Emily's heart began pounding violently. Something had clearly been found, but the technicians' expressions weren't like those when they discovered ordinary illnesses. They looked confused and at times even pale. "Dr. Harris will be here shortly," the technician told Emily. "Please wait just a moment." Meeting up with Brian in the waiting room, Emily explained the situation to him. They seemed to have found something, but the technicians were acting strange. Brian squeezed his wife's hand. "It'll be okay. Whatever the results are, we'll face them together." Just then, David appeared, walking quickly. His expression was tense. "Emily, I need to talk to you." David lowered his voice. "Could you come to my office alone?" "Alone?" Brian questioned. "Sorry, Brian. I'd like to speak with Emily alone first." David's tone was different from usual. "I'll explain everything soon." Emily followed David with growing anxiety. When they entered the examination room, David quietly closed the door. Then he turned on the monitor of the laptop on his desk. "Emily, please sit down." David offered her a chair. "What I'm about to show you might be quite shocking." The monitor displayed CT images of Emily's body. Cross-sections of organs were shown in black and white, incomprehensible to an untrained eye. "These are CT images of your abdomen," David said, operating the mouse with trembling hands. "Look at this." A certain area on the screen was circled in red. To Emily, it looked like small white dots. "What is this?" Emily asked. "Foreign objects." David's voice was low and tense. "Multiple objects that shouldn't medically exist are present in your body." Emily stared at the screen. "Foreign objects?" David displayed images from a different angle. This time, the shape of the foreign objects was clearer. Small capsule-like objects were scattered throughout various parts of her body. "These aren't things that would naturally enter the body," David continued with a grave expression. "They were artificially ingested, and over a long period of time." The blood drained from Emily's face. "Artificially? What does that mean?" "It means someone intentionally put them in your body." David stood up and paced around the room. "Moreover, these objects contain special chemical substances. They're the cause of your poor health." Emily slumped back in her chair. Reality was becoming surreal. "But why, Emily? This isn't medical treatment. This is a crime." David placed his hand on his sister-in-law's shoulder. "Someone is trying to poison you." The moment she heard those words, Emily's breath stopped. Poison. The word echoed in her head. "I'm calling the police immediately." David reached for the phone. This is attempted murder. We need an investigation right away." Emily began to tremble. Who would do this to her and why? The 3 months of poor health had been caused by someone's malice. But who? Emily managed to squeeze out the words. "I don't have any enemies." David answered while making the call. "The police will investigate. People close to you, people you meet regularly, people you share meals and drinks with, everyone will be investigated." Various faces flashed through Emily's mind: colleagues, friends, and family. Could it really be someone close to her? David's voice seemed distant. Emily couldn't accept this reality. Someone was trying to kill her. That terrifying fact slowly sank into her heart. The police arrived an hour after the call. 2 Boston police detectives appeared at the hospital, and questioning began in David's examination room. "Mrs. Harris, you've been through a terrible ordeal," the older detective, Inspector Johnson, said gently. "Today, we'll hear the detailed test results, and then you'll undergo surgery to remove the objects." Emily was confused. Surgery? They needed to remove the foreign objects from her body. Brian held his wife's hand, feeling her trembling. "How long will the surgery take?" Brian asked. David answered. "We'll do it laparoscopically. We'll remove the foreign objects scattered throughout your body one by one. It should take about 3 hours." While preparations for surgery were being made, the police began their initial investigation. They asked detailed questions about Emily's daily life, relationships, and eating patterns. "In the past 3 months, who have you regularly shared meals or drinks with?" the younger detective, Thompson, asked while recording in his notebook. Emily thought carefully. "I sometimes have lunch with colleagues at work, and my mother-in-law visits about twice a month to cook homemade meals." "Tell us more about your mother-in-law." Inspector Johnson leaned forward. "Helen Harris. She's a former nurse, a very kind person," Emily answered with confusion. "She's been worried about my health, always making nutritious meals and bringing herbal tea." The 2 detectives exchanged glances. "Tell us more about that herbal tea." "She said it was a recipe she learned from her grandmother, that it was effective for recovering from fatigue," Emily spoke while recalling. "It had a distinctive aroma and was a bit bitter, but it warmed my body when I drank it." Brian listened to his wife's story and felt something nagging at him. His mother had started bringing herbal tea around the same time Emily's health problems began. The surgery was performed in the afternoon. Emily underwent the procedure under general anesthesia by a medical team including David. Using laparoscopy to examine her body thoroughly, they discovered a total of 12 small capsule-like objects. These were attached to the walls of her stomach and intestines, gradually releasing their contents. After surgery, the extracted objects were immediately sent to the police forensics department. While it would take several days for analysis results, a preliminary examination revealed a horrifying truth. "These are very cleverly made poison capsules," the forensics expert explained. "They're designed to decompose in the body over time, releasing specific chemical substances. Those substances gradually destroy reproductive function and could eventually cause multiple organ failure." Emily heard this explanation from her hospital bed. Substances that cause infertility. They had been systematically destroying her body over a long period. "Medical knowledge was required to create these," the expert continued. "Moreover, the method of administration was carefully planned. Dissolving them in liquid for ingestion would be the most effective." Police began investigating the people around Emily in parallel: colleagues, friends, and family. They examined everyone's alibis and motives. 3 days later, decisive evidence was found. "Mrs. Harris, here are the results of searching your mother-in-law's home." Inspector Johnson visited Emily's hospital room. "We found the same chemical substances as those extracted from you in a kitchen cabinet." Emily was speechless. "Helen, that kind mother-in-law." "We also found her diary," the inspector continued gravely. "It contains detailed records of her planned crimes against you." Brian collapsed into a chair. "Mom did this to Emily." "Helen Harris is currently under arrest," the inspector reported. She initially denied everything but confessed when confronted with the evidence. Emily asked through tears, "Why? What did I ever do to her?" The inspector sighed heavily. According to her statement, she considered you an unsuitable woman for her son. She cited your education, family background, and most importantly, not having children in 5 years of marriage. 5 years, Emily repeated in a shaking voice. But she started poisoning me from when we were newlyweds. No, the systematic administration began 3 months ago, the inspector corrected. However, she had been planning to eliminate you since your marriage. Initially, she tried to persuade her son, but that didn't work. Brian held his head in his hands. Mom certainly didn't think well of Emily at first, but I thought she had come to accept her over time. On the surface, yes, the inspector explained, but inwardly she was building up hatred, and when you didn't have children, she used that as an excuse to take the ultimate step. Emily was shocked. That warm smile, those kind words, those heartfelt home-cooked meals, it had all been an act. She abused her knowledge as a former nurse, the inspector continued. She knew how to compound chemical substances, how to administer them, and even how to conceal the symptoms. It was carefully planned to avoid detection even by doctors. She was putting it in the herbal tea, Emily said, trembling. Yes, every visit she brought specially prepared herbal tea. Neighbors testified that she always made sure you finished drinking it all before leaving. Brian apologized to his wife through tears. I'm sorry, Emily. My mother did this. I should have noticed. Emily squeezed her husband's hand. It's not your fault. I never suspected Helen would do something like this either. The inspector shared one final important fact. Helen Harris confessed that she had been planning this crime for 5 years. She said she decided to eliminate the unwanted daughter-in-law on your wedding day. Emily was stunned. The wedding day. On that happy day, her mother-in-law had already been planning to kill her. She will be charged with assault and attempted murder. The inspector stood up. As a malicious crime abusing medical knowledge, she will face severe punishment. Silence fell over the hospital room. Emily and Brian needed time to accept this horrifying truth. The family bonds they had built over 5 years of marriage had actually been covered by a mask of their mother-in-law's hatred. Now we'll begin detoxification treatment. David entered the room. Fortunately, we caught this early, so complete recovery is expected. Emily shed tears of relief. Her body might recover, but the wounds to her heart wouldn't heal easily. The pain of being betrayed by the family she had trusted, that might never completely disappear. 1 year later, Emily was visiting David's hospital for a regular checkup. The detoxification treatment had proceeded smoothly, and the chemical substances had been completely removed from her body. Most joyously, a new life was growing in her womb. Everything looks good. David smiled while looking at the ultrasound results. You're well into the stable period now, so there's nothing to worry about. Emily looked up at her husband happily. Brian held his wife's hand with tears in his eyes. Thank you, David. If it weren't for you by now, Brian choked up. Mother-in-law Helen's trial had ended 3 months ago for planned attempted poisoning and assault. She had been sentenced to 8 years in prison. The verdict read in court shocked society as a malicious crime abusing medical knowledge. I believe there was a more suitable woman for my son. Helen tried to justify her actions to the end. An uneducated woman with no good family background is a disgrace to the Harris family. She had stated the correct surname this time, but her prejudiced values never changed. Brian completely severed ties with his mother. I never want to see her again, he said through tears. I cannot accept someone who tried to kill Emily as my mother. Meanwhile, father-in-law George broke down crying in front of his wife when he learned the truth. I'm sorry, Emily. If I had been more observant. He sincerely apologized and tried to build a new relationship with his son and daughter-in-law. It's not your fault, Dad. Emily answered kindly. Let's start over as a family. George looked forward to his grandchild's birth. What Helen did is unforgivable. But I want to be a good grandfather to your child. On the way home from the hospital, Emily and Brian walked through a park. The spring sunshine was warm, and the fresh green trees were beautiful. When I think about what happened then, I still shudder. Emily leaned against her husband's arm. But I'm glad we learned the truth. I feel the same way. Brian looked at his wife. What Mom did is never forgivable, but it deepened our bond. Emily smiled. When this child is born, I want to teach them the true meaning of family. Even if you're related by blood, you're not family if you don't respect each other. Conversely, even without blood ties, if you love and support each other, you can become a true family. The two continued walking hand in hand. Their mother-in-law's crime had been a terrible event, but they had learned much from it. Family isn't a relationship of domination through blood ties, but a relationship of mutual respect for each other's personalities and choices. And true love isn't about possessing someone, but wishing for their happiness. We should be able to build a good relationship with Dad, Emily said. He'll be a kind grandfather to this child. Brian nodded. Dad is different from Mom. He'll surely respect our choices. By the time the sun began setting in the western sky, they were heading home. In their small townhouse, preparations for the child to be born were complete. Emily stood by the window, gazing at the sunset. The terror from a year ago was fading, but the lesson remained. People shouldn't be fooled by superficial kindness. True family means accepting each other's differences and supporting one another. It's okay, Emily said to her unborn child, placing her hand on her belly. You'll be born into love. You'll grow up happily, surrounded by real family. Brian embraced his wife from behind. We'll definitely be the best parents for this child. Their future stretched brightly ahead. The scars from the past might never disappear, but the happiness that lay beyond overcoming them would be deeper and more certain. True family bonds are built not on blood relations, but on love and respect. As Emily stood by the nursery window in their Cambridge townhouse, watching the soft flakes of snow drift lazily from the December sky, a wave of emotions crashed over her like an unrelenting tide. It had been over a year since the nightmare unraveled, since the day she learned that the woman she had called Mom with genuine affection had been systematically poisoning her, all while wearing that warm, deceptive smile. The betrayal still stung, sharp and raw, even now as she cradled her swollen belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the life growing inside her. How could she reconcile the Helen she had known with the monster revealed in court? The homemade lasagnas, the herbal teas offered with such concern, the gentle scoldings about taking care of her health, they had all been weapons in disguise. Emily remembered every visit vividly, Helen bustling in the kitchen, insisting she'd drink every drop of that bitter tea for her own good, watching with those kind eyes that now haunted her dreams. It wasn't just the physical pain, the months of exhaustion, the dizziness that made the world spin, the fear that something incurable was devouring her from within. It was the emotional devastation, the realization that for 5 years, since the day she walked down the aisle in her white dress, beaming with hope, Helen had been plotting her demise. Tears welled up as Emily thought about the what-ifs. What if David hadn't pushed for the CT scan? What if the capsules had released their full poison, robbing her not just of health, but of this miracle, the child she and Brian had longed for? The doctors had confirmed it. The substances were designed to destroy her fertility first, ensuring no grandchildren would ever come from her. Helen's hatred had been so precise, so calculated, rooted in prejudices Emily could barely comprehend. Her background, her career ambitions, her choice to delay motherhood. Unsuitable, Helen had sneered in court, as if Emily were a stain on the family name. Yet amid the anger and grief, there was a profound gratitude that anchored her. Gratitude for Brian, who had held her through the nightmares, who had severed ties with his own mother without hesitation, choosing her, their love, over blood. His pain mirrored hers. She saw it in his eyes every time Helen's name surfaced. He had lost a mother that day too, the idealized version replaced by a stranger capable of such evil. Together they had grieved, rebuilt, and emerged stronger. Counseling had helped them navigate the trust shattered by deception, teaching them that true partnership meant vulnerability, not blind loyalty. And then there was George, Brian's father, whose quiet remorse and genuine efforts to atone had become a beacon of redemption. His apologies, his excitement over the upcoming grandchild, they reminded Emily that family wasn't defined solely by blood, but by choice, respect, and love. He had become the grandfather figure she hoped for their child, proving that healing was possible when someone owned their silence in the face of wrong. Most of all, Emily felt a fierce protectiveness for the little one inside her. This baby, conceived after the toxins were purged, symbolized triumph, a defiant affirmation of life over hatred. She whispered promises to her belly, stories of resilience, lessons in discernment, warnings against superficial kindness masking malice. No child of hers would grow up oblivious to the complexities of human nature, but they would know unwavering love. The scars remained, nights when doubt crept in, questioning every act of kindness from others, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they fueled a deeper appreciation for authenticity. Emily placed a hand on the window pane, the cold glass grounding her. She had survived attempted murder by someone who should have cherished her. From the ashes of betrayal rose a profound joy, a family forged in truth, a marriage tempered by fire, and a future bright with honest love. As the snow blanketed the world outside in pristine white, Emily smiled through her tears. She was not just surviving, she was thriving, ready to embrace motherhood with a heart wiser, stronger, and infinitely more grateful.